Hey guys, it's me, Kajaya, and I am back again with another Google Hangout with a great topic, also with a very fascinating man that you're going to see a few times. His name is Christopher Burns, right?
That's right.
Now, tell everyone what your sun, moon, and rising sign is, and also what you do.
Okay. So Sun and Moon, Pisces, rising sign Leo, which is a really interesting mix because Pisces can be a little bit kind of dreamy and they kind of shrink in violets, but I love being out there, and that's that Leo definitely. So look at me, everybody. Hello. So what I do is I've got a YouTube channel, Christopher Byrne monthly tarot readings. So every month I dish out 12 uh, forecasts for the month based upon the position of the birth moon in your sign, and we go through we use a little bit of astrology and a lot of tarot, and they're a lot of fun. And the way that works out is quite interesting because it's a two-layered thing. You can listen to it for your birth moon position, but equally, if you listen to the whole thing, it's a kind of like a synopsis of the month and what to look out for, and how to best focus to get the best out of the month. That's kind of probably the thing that most people come to me for first of all. But what I actually do is I fix problems. So if you've got a problem, be it anxiety, phobia, illness, worry, blockages, don't know how to move on with your life, can't get over an old relationship, keep making the same kind of mistakes, and I can help. And the methods that I use are very quick. One of the things that I pride myself in is that you won't be coming to see me for weeks and weeks and weeks. You'll see me once or twice and that's it. So I do, I try and do as much as I can for very little or nothing. But obviously, we've all got to eat. So I think the output. I do a lot of output, all the videos. And I'll answer questions if people have simple questions. I'll answer those for free at least twice a week. Some people, of course, always come along and say, "Can you please give me a full reading?" And it's like, well, you need to pay for that, really. But there's always one or two out there that try it on. Good luck to them. That's all right, isn't it? So yeah, that's what I do. I'm an acupressurist. I'm a trained counsellor. I've been reading and teaching tarot for about 30 years, and if you've got a problem, I can fix it. So that's what I do.
Well, speaking of problems and fixing things and evolving, of course, by the title of this video, we're going to talk about the Saturn return, mostly his Saturn return and what he experienced. And what I wanted to do was talk about, your life before your Saturn return, what you were doing and, your state of mind. And then,
Okay.
talk about that transition into your Saturn return, what changed, what sort of things came to the surface, what did you, notice or didn't pay attention to that you're now paying attention to. And, the third part, I wanted to focus on life after, things you didn't notice that you noticed, the things that you didn't notice during your Saturn return and before your Saturn return that you notice now, and just the whole looking back at things in hindsight and how much you grew and changed and evolved.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, on my Saturn return, it started at around about 27. The effects of it started to happen. So before this life, I had a property business and I was earning lots of money and also amassing lots of stress. And as I hit 27 in February of that year, and I was like, you know what? There's something going on. I can remember saying to a good friend of mine at the time, you know what? It's like I can smell change in the air. Something is coming. I don't know what it is. I'm really excited for it. I don't know what it is. Anyway, in April, well, it was the 31st of March that year, out of the blue, quite out of the blue, I got pneumonia. And it came on literally in the space of 24 hours. I didn't realise I had pneumonia. So it ended up with me being like ambulanced into the local emergency room and then having a respiratory arrest. So it's very interesting. I just want to talk about that a little bit because lots of people talk about near-death experiences. But the thing I learned from this, because I was led on the gurney there in the emergency room, and suddenly I couldn't hear anything. And I'm going, okay, that's kind of weird. Can't hear anything. Still conscious, you know, still there. Then I couldn't see anything. All dark and warm. And I'm like, okay, this is a bit freaky, but it's all right. And then I couldn't feel anything. And then I was in this tunnel. And then I went, and it wasn't a white light worryingly, it was an orange light. So I don't know where I'm going at the end of all this, but anyway, whatever. I'd rather go to that place because there's more parties there. So anyway, and then you come to this point where, and unconsciously I'm thinking, you know what, I'm starved of oxygen, maybe I'm hallucinating, but no, because I went to an actual place. And I don't want to go on about it for too long, that's a whole other story in itself, but basically, when we die, we don't, what I learned from this, we don't suffer spiritually. The true us, the true essence of us goes somewhere else. The body might be in pain, because I was being, you know, I was having all kinds of tubes put in me and having adrenaline injected into me and all sorts, and I didn't feel any of that. So if any of you have ever experienced loss and like loved ones suffering, just know, be assured that the soul, the true essence of them goes somewhere else. But the interesting thing, when I came back, and I was out for 3 days, and I came back, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and my first conscious thought was, what am I? I didn't even know what I was. And then I remembered what I was, and then I thought, I've arrived, I've gone to heaven, right? I didn't really believe in heaven, but I've gone, because I was consciously aware of having arrived in a solid place. And then I looked up and I saw the awful pattern of the curtains, and I knew I was in the general hospital. And I think at kind of 2:30 or 2:40 in the morning, I swore quite loudly because I was really quite pissed that I'd come back. Anyway, that was a real pivotal moment, because that's when I really started to kind of, this spark, that something had been opened up, and I was immediately different. So then coming onwards, on what I should have done at the time, I should have walked away from everything, but I didn't, because we do try and desperately keep
Hold on.
all the old rules. Yeah. So I held on, and then eventually I made the decision. It was the 23rd, around about the 23rd of March, April were always very interesting times for me. If anything's going to change, it's going to be around that time. So I made that decision to give up the corporate path and go and do the stuff that I do now. And I went from earning kind of like thousands to earning nothing at all, but I was happy. And I realized that actually, when you go through your life doing what you love, then there is a payment all of its own within that. I often heard it said, you know, when you're walking on your path, the universe will provide. And you kind of say it in a sort of trite fashion, you know, but when you actually do it, yeah, when you actually do it, it is amazing. So the actual point, I suppose, when my Saturn came back at that 29.5 year, you know, point, I realized for the first time that I hadn't grown up. And it led me on to make this theory that we don't grow up until we're 30. And until you're 30, you don't really know what you want. Because what happened to me is I started to go, hang on a minute, this is not what I want. This is not really me. And suddenly I knew what I wanted, and I knew in essence what I was. And then of course you come upon all the, well, I can't be that because people won't like that. Like, you know, it's all this crazy stuff. We live so much for other people. And so I made that decision. I realized I was a people pleaser. Because of the way that I was brought up, you know, I was constantly the go-between, trying to keep both sides happy. I used to do it with friends at school. I used to do it with people. So of course, when you're seen to be a people pleaser, you draw to you people that are going to use you if you're unlucky. So I looked around, so all these people around me that were just kind of like, you know, into their own kind of games and in it for themselves. And I was like, no, I used to have this kind of fantasy when I was young, that, you know, you could kind of build this place where it was a kind of like a communal place where everybody would work together and do stuff for each other. And I used to think, why can't we live like that? Why can't society be like that, where you can just say, right, I enjoy growing plants, for instance, so, and you know, don't have a lot of money, so I'll grow vegetables and fruit, and you can have some of these because I love doing it. I just don't understand. There are people that do that sort of thing, but surely that's how society should be. That was the big wake up for me. That was the big thing. Realizing that I actually was a people pleaser, that was a big thing. So I changed that. It took me a little while, but you put a lot of people's noses out of joint when you suddenly say no. They go, what? How dare you say no?
Yeah, how dare you say no to me?
Yeah. And I started to become far more sensitive. I realized, like, all along I'd been kind of empathic, but I just pushed that to one side because it was all about, I used to have this thing where I had to make something of myself because my father never made anything of himself. And I wanted to make something of myself. And I realized in that sort of year between sort of heading off to the great blue yonder in the sky and actually realizing that I'm going to change everything, I realized how important it is to work from within. Whatever you're trying to make, you say, I'm going to work really hard and really hard and really hard because that's what's expected of me out here, and all the time in here nothing's being fed. So it took me a long time. I mean, it took me probably 10 years from that point to really extricate myself fully from the habits and the need to be around that kind of toxic person. Because you only know what you know, and I would sit and for long periods of time and meditate on how I could be different, how I could be myself, based upon, we get ourselves in these routines, don't we? Which, is kind of very Saturnian itself. It's those routines and oppressions. But yeah, gradually, and for me, the big deal came probably about a year after that, when I realized that I was actually sustaining myself now in a very different way, in a very honorable way, because you're helping other people, so that was good. Yeah, that was good. It was a bit, it was coupled with all sorts of things going on around that. It was like a 2-year period, really. So about a year before Saturn coming in and about a year after that direct return, relationship I was in at the time, was my first child was born in '96, and a year after that, we split up because I won't go into too many details, but we split up for a while, got back together again, and then that sort of chugged on for another sort of 8 or 9 years until we finally split up. But that was, in itself, that was a great freedom because the kids were, I mean, they're all teenagers now. One lives with me and they come around a lot, but having that kind of base to that focus at the time of, you got your kids, and I wanted them to be proud of me, and I wanted to show them that there's another way of doing things as well. So I think as parents, we very often we only know what we were taught by our parents. Well, I thankfully figured out that my parents, or my father particularly, wasn't particularly cut out to be a parent, but there you go. And so I thought, I'm going to do this differently, and I'm going to be myself, and it makes for a better relationship. It really does. If any of you out there are struggling with, particularly teenagers, if you've got teenage children and you can't connect to them, drop the mother or father act and go to them as you and talk to them, because that's what they need. I do a lot of work at a local college, right? And every single problem these students present with, it's all because of normally relationship breakdown with the parents. So, we've got a job to do. It's not just about, sitting on YouTube and going, right, this is all cool, and everybody breathe in and breathe out. We got to get out in the world, get your hands dirty, innit? Otherwise, it's a long road ahead of you when you haven't got your family around you. Anyway, I'm off on one. Sorry, rein me in.
That's good, because that's what the Saturn return is all about. It's about aligning with your soul's true purpose and what you're here to do on this earth.
Yeah.
If you're not in alignment with that, then of course you'll have situations sort of break down, or things just sort of crumbling around you that you should not hold on to. And like you said, I think before any big Saturn transit, you sort of get this call, this yearning for change. I haven't had a Saturn return yet. When my biggest Saturn experience was when it transited my first house.
Okay.
And when it was squaring my sun and my Saturn. But before it started to transit my first house, I just got this urge that I just wanted to take control of my life. I wanted to be the boss. I wanted to, just really do for myself.
Yeah.
And that transit sort of provided all of that, and I really had to grow as a person. So you having your Saturn return and, feeling that pull, that call to want to change and do something different is great. And I don't think, because you hear a lot of people sort of fearing the Saturn return, I don't think it's something to be feared. I think it's a great time for opportunity if you have been aligned with what you know are meant to do in this life, I think it's a great time for things to really take off for you.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
Saturn has transit every last single house, and now it's back to its final position, you know, in your birth chart. And it's like, all right, what have you been doing, you know, for the past 28 years, 30 years of your life? You know, what do you have to show for it? And if you don't have a good enough answer, it's like, all right, now is the time to let go of all that and start anew. You know, don't be afraid to start over. Don't be afraid to start something new. Now is the time to come into alignment with who you really are.
Well, you know, it's very interesting because, like, I always said that when you talk with people, you find they get to that kind of 30. It's more usually it's women are more in tune with it than men, because men are, you know, too busy
Stubborn.
thinking about football and, you know, boxer shorts and all that sort of stuff. But and they go suddenly like, oh, you know what? I'm kind of waking up. I know what I want, and I've got this stuff. I say to my kids, you know, don't worry about getting into relationships, because you're going to change so much between now and 30. Go out in the world, yeah, and have fun, you know, and be safe and all the rest of it. But don't get locked down into these relationships, and don't have kids, you know, if you can help it.
I tell
Obviously, for some
everyone
people,
that.
you know, because you got to know yourself before you go out and inflict life on other people, you know.
I tell that to everyone. Look, your 20s, your early 20s are for you to grow as a person, to really know who you are, you know, to know what you want. I think you have to be fulfilled in your life before you get into any kind of relationship with someone else, or
Oh
before
yeah,
you have children. You know, I don't want to be left empty, you know, and then you have this kid. And I think that's why so many kids grow up a little screwed up, because they have parents who are not fulfilled, who are not happy, and you know they all of a sudden had this kid that they had to take care of, so they had to drop the parent had to drop whatever hopes or ambitions that they had, and sort of take care of this kid that they're not, even though the parent may love the child, they may have some sort of resentment that they don't have that freedom anymore, you
and
know.
that's absolutely true. Yeah, you know, if you think about the way that our lives are structured, you know, we when we can, you know, when we can stop wetting ourselves in public, we go to school, and we're there all day, and then you leave school and you go to college or uni, and you go get a job, and then when you're too knackered to work, they say, right, you can have the time to yourself now. So you go and sit and you know, look at your gold watch that they've given you, and it's really quite mad. And when you think about your job, there's a great quote from a book called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. It's about children. Good little book. You can read it in an afternoon. Fantastic book. And it says that children are like arrows, and we are but the archers. And we you know we release them on their flight, but we've got no control over where they land. So you know you give them that best start, and then it's up to them. But you know, some of the starts that we give our children, where if you know you've got two parents that kind of hate each other, because you know it's always the same, isn't it? Oh, let's have a baby. You know, we're having arguments. Let's have a baby. No, don't do that, because
Because that's
that's like,
going to fix everything, right?
that's right. And what it will fix is the fact that you now not only do you hate each other, but you haven't any sleep for 4 weeks. So you know, hide the bread knife, because it's going to get messy. But we need to, you know, it's about knowing there's another way. And I think this is a very interesting point of this Saturn return, that it suddenly shows you, oh, hello, there's another way.
Mhm.
Because we're not taught, we're never taught. You say, right, you've got to go to school, you've got to get a job, whether you like it or not, that's irrelevant. You've got to be a citizen, you've got to pay taxes. But actually, what if you said, right, you want to do this thing, okay? You want to be I don't know, you want to be a musician, or you want to be a guy that wanders around the land giving healing out to people, or you know, whatever. And you say, right, well, you can do that, but it might take you 10 years before it can support you well enough. So are you prepared to make that sacrifice? And the answer should be yes, of course. But we're always saying, no, go and get a job, right? Because you'll get a bit of money every month, and you know you can never get any more than that, so you don't have to worry. You can live within your means, and you can it's like having a plant pot that you never pot up to a bigger plant. You know, we need to be repotted every so often. So we by going out into the world and learning new things and trying new things, you learn about yourself. And I learned so much about myself in that period from 95 and probably until about 2000. I learned so much. And the beauty of it is you never really stop learning about yourself, because we are at the core of it all, we're infinite beings having a very finite experience. So we lose ourselves in that finite experience and we forget the infinity that we truly are. So it's just a shift around, isn't it? Reframe it.
Do you think, because your Saturn is in Pisces in the 9th house, right?
Yeah.
Well, you had this call for spirituality. Do you think whichever house Saturn is placed in your chart, do you think that is the indication of what your true calling in this life is? Or do you think it has something to do with it? Because you gave up your private owned business to turn to spirituality and tarot cards, which goes under the 9th house, philosophy and spirituality. So do you think where Saturn is in your birth chart is an indication of where you should be going in life and what you should be doing?
Oh, absolutely, because right from a very early age I can remember being fascinated by the kind of like the Buddhist monks. You'd see them on TV sometimes. There was a show back in the day called Kung Fu with David Carradine, and this used to be shown in the UK like Saturday tea times. And so if you're aware of the show, David Carradine played this monk who'd been exiled from China for some crime he didn't commit. Is always the way on these TV shows. And it's set in the Old West, so he'd go from town to town and he would right wrongs and do stuff. And I looked at this and like 5-year-old kid, I'm looking at this sat on the rug thinking, that's what I want to be when I grow up. That's what I want to be. Well, I've got the hair now. He was bald. We're doing all right. But it's funny, and that calling was there right from the outset. I can remember looking at things and having thoughts in my head when I was very young that were like what the sort of things I'd think now. That was the higher self. It was always there. So I think the problem comes for me when you've got Saturn maybe in the early houses, first and second particularly, because obviously the first is about how you like project out into the world, and if Saturn's in there, you could either be very authoritarian, very very harsh, or you could be very restricted and shy. Now that doesn't mean you can't overcome that. You can, but this is the beauty about astrology. The fact that you can see, right, this is the reason why, so I can work towards overcoming that. Because ultimately we were given free will, weren't we? Which is probably arguably the worst thing we ever got. But there you go, you've got it, do something with it. And I think that house number 8 and house number 9 are interesting houses, because the number 9, which if we go with tarot numbers, 9 is perfection. So the idea of trying to find your perfect view of the universe and the world around you, the philosophy of it, and understanding that there's more than one philosophy, because we all interpretate, if that's the word, or we all interpret, to use proper English, we will interpret the world in a different way based upon what we know. When you go beyond that and you get into the kind of realms of the higher self and the spiritual thought, things become very different again, because ultimately we all want the same thing. You can sit and philosophize. I went out with a philosopher years ago, and they just talk and talk and talk, and they never do anything, right? So no offense to you philosophers out there, but you know what? There's more to life than talking and thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a conversation for a different video. I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because when you look at, for instance, everybody suffers at some point in their life depression. Everybody goes through it. You're very, very lucky if you've never had a depressive episode. And there are a number of factors which I think are very Saturn in their nature. So the inability to like project your truth out, the inability to share what you're going through, because if you say to somebody, oh, I'm feeling really bad today, and they go, oh, I don't know about that. Yeah, you'll be right. Take a tablet, get drunk, whatever. I don't want to know. Don't burden me with your crap, brother. And that's that very restrictive sort of Saturn thing. So again, Saturns can be good. Saturn can be, well, everything. If people say to me about tarot cards, they say, oh, do you read if the card comes up reversed? Does that mean difference? No, it doesn't. It just means that you put it in the pack the wrong way up. Depending on what's going on around the cards, will tell you whether it's good or not. Like the Ace of Swords, for instance, is a really great card. It's a potential for clarity, projection of your thought out into the world, wisdom. But equally, this might make you realise there's some something really bad going on that you don't want to know about. So, you know, that can be bad, but it's good to know about it. And it's the same with the planets. You know, if you think about for me, what's interesting is this, like the mythology of the planets, particularly Saturn and Jupiter, where Jupiter broke out of Saturn's head. So it's that, for me, it's the metaphor. Get out of your head, you know, get out of your head where all the dogma lives. So in the Hierophant, in the tarot, the Hierophant card, although it's not explicitly linked to Saturn, it does talk about that societal control that which used to be the church. So it's a Taurian card, but for me, it strongly links with Saturn, because once the Hierophant's head is removed in my tarot deck, the Queen of Swords cuts off the head of the Hierophant to leave the Hierophant free to do what he's supposed to do, to administer spiritual blessings and teach. Because in here is where the dogma's at, you know. So it's all very interesting. Get out of your heads, because, you know, particularly this bit of your head, the conscious bit, it only knows what you know. It doesn't know anything new. And that's why it's great to have guys like you out there that talk about these things in a way that's accessible, because people will listen to it and they'll go, oh, you know what, I never thought of that. That's really cool. I'm going to try that. I'm going to look at it that way. And that is it, breaking out of your head. So Jupiter is about expansion and connection and happiness and fun and joy. And, you know, it's a great thing to have. But Saturn, you know, Saturn came before it. So we need to understand it's that evolution, isn't it, along the way.
Do you think that, because I'm starting to see that Saturn is more of a benefic than Jupiter?
Yeah, Jupiter is very unpredictable, I find. Now, I had around about, when was it? About 99 to 2001. Jupiter was in an area of my chart that meant literally things, it was the fifth house, I think, fifth or sixth house, I can't remember now. But everything was coming in really quick and going out really quick. And it's just like, you don't know what the hell's going on. And it was just everything. It was there 1 minute, gone the next, in the morning, out in the afternoon, not just money, but everything. And this went on for quite a while, because Jupiter is quite a way out. It takes a while to move around. It went on for about 2 years. And that is just, you know what? Saturn wouldn't give you any of this shenanigans. Saturn would just get, so there it is, you know, you deal with it. But Jupiter is, for me, Jupiter's a little bit like walking around with a firework in your pocket with a lit fuse, right? It's going to go off at some point. You don't know when. It might be really fun, or it might blow bits of you off. You know, you just don't know. So I think we have to take Jupiter with a very, we need to be grounded. So, you know, again, you see people with early Jupiter in their chart, they tend to be very kind of like, they chop and change, and they're very dynamic, but they're all over the place. You've got to slow down, you know? Yeah. It's powerful stuff. It really is.
So as far as like the fear of Saturn, I think that comes when people sort of don't pay attention to their lessons. How do you think your life would be different if you did not pay attention to that call, that yearning?
Oh, wow. That's something I've never thought about, and that's really scary. I probably by now would have been on my third or fourth heart bypass, I reckon. I think the way that I was going, there was such a high degree of stress and fear that it probably would have sent me, you know, it's certainly, I think, down the heart attack route. I'm sure it would have done. Looking back on it now, there was constant worry. When you deal with other people's property, you know, it's never ever good enough, and there's people will get very, understandably, get very animated about, you know, if something's going wrong and they want it sorted out. So there was always, I mean, we had you know, we had people threatening to drive bulldozers into the front of the office, and real crap, you know what I mean? You don't want to play those games. So it was great to get out of that, and the pressure that was lifted off was immense. And also, of course, because it was a company that employed a few people, there were always these crazy, and most of them belonged to one family, so there were always these crazy, like, sort of soap opera tales going on, and you walk into it and just think, oh, why am I doing this to myself? So yeah, I don't think it would have been a very pretty picture had I stayed where I was. So
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to ask you about. You said you employed some of your family members, right?
it
Your
was another, it was another family. It was another family. Yeah.
your Jupiter is in the ninth house, and opposite of that, I mean, your Saturn is in the ninth house, and on the opposite end of that is the third house. Do you think your third house got affected in any way, shape, or form during this transit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's I pretty much distanced myself from everybody in my life. Not consciously, it just happened. They just fell away. The minute I kind of realised that they weren't right for me, doesn't mean they're bad people. That does a bit, actually. They were a bit bad, but we like to, love and light everybody. Um, so yeah, the minute I realised that, they just like bang, gone. And I was like, wow, this is cool. That was the first time I'd ever experienced actually just being on my own in a really good way. I was like, okay, I'm cool. I was teaching Tai Chi at the time, and I was doing little talks and bits and pieces, and I'd go in the garden, and I just kind of, waft about and sit and meditate. It was really nice. And I realized I had no worries. There was nothing ahead of me that was going to jump out and get me. And I was like, you know what? This is good. There's a saying in Taoism, less is more, right? And ultimately, nothing is everything. And whatever you've got going on in your life, you can bet if it's bad, it's an over accumulation of something, whether it's the need to work harder or the need to earn more money or the need to, whatever it is, let go of it, right? Because you don't need anything. You're perfect as you are. Every single one of you that's watching this, we are perfect as we are. You hear people say it all the time, I'm working on myself. What are you working on? What is there to work on? You're perfect now. Put it down.
Do
No,
the
no,
best
but
you can for where you're at right now.
yeah, I got this book by somebody or other, and they say I've got to do this. No, that might work for them. It's not going to
Mm.
work for you. You've got to find your own way. I think I love it with the self-help books. You pick up the book and it's on the back. You read the blurb and it says, "This book changed my life, and it will change yours too." And you think, "Oh, great!" And you read it, and then you go, "Hang on a minute, there must have been a page pulled out because I'm still not changed."
I still feel real shitty about myself.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
even more because I spent money on this book.
Yeah, I'm gonna go and buy another book now. Brilliant.
Well, you're mentioning Tai Chi and Taoism and spirituality. That
Yeah.
all falls under the ninth house. So do you also think that whichever house your Saturn return is in, basically you should focus solely on that house? Because
I
it sounds like you sort of retreated in a way to the ninth house when you
Yes.
had your Saturn return.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because we most of us don't realize this, but we've all got a place that we retreat to when we need to, not when things are necessarily bad. Sometimes when things just need to change, and there's that place. Some people go down the garden, some people go for a walk in nature, some people go to the pool hall, whatever. But it's where do you retreat to in there? And certainly I retreated to that place of, right, there is a place within me where I know that everything is all right, and I know that I can trust myself 100%. And that's the sort of place I go to. And I think wherever your Saturn is, because that's going to form the basis of what you do. It's a big, big thing. It's going to form the basis of what you do. People often talk about the sun, and yeah, the sun's great, but that's more about the way you shine out, the way that you let the world see you. The moon, obviously, being how you interpret things inside, but Saturn, because it is about that, it's that framework that it's like your own, I don't know, it's like your own exoskeleton. you
Mm-hmm.
know you step into that, and that's what you are. And I think that, for instance, I mean, I know a few people that have got Saturn in the 10th, and they are, proper business, ordered, live their life, got the, I don't have fire factors anymore, got the alarm there. It's 10:15. I've got 15 minutes for you. I rung one up the other day. He's like, give me a call at 12:46, and I've got 10 minutes. 12:46. That's how they live their life. That's Saturn in the 10th house, and that's good for them. That means they can run these big companies. And I bet if you looked at some of the big CEOs and big powerful business people in the world, you'd see where their Saturns were. I bet they'd either be 10th or maybe second or first.
My
But
mother has Saturn in the 10th house, retrograde in Gemini. So she has started a lot of businesses, but as far as maintaining them, it's been a problem.
Well,
She's
that's,
helped a lot
yeah,
of people get their business started, and she's been, really helpful to that. But I always say, man, you can really start a business and you can really get it going, but as far as maintaining it, lady, wow.
that's Gemini. That's the thing, isn't it? It's like I like, and this again, this is where people sometimes go wrong. They say, right, I've got this great idea to start a business. That's great, but once you've started the fire, how do you keep it going? That means boring. That means going to the woodpile and maintaining it. So probably she's somebody that should become like a business entrepreneur guru, help people start.
Does, and she's actually back in school for real estate, and she's always said, her biggest regret was not sticking to some of the businesses that she started,
Oh,
because they were all successful. None of them, she never stopped because they were, going down the drain or anything like that. They were all successful. She just stopped and switched to something else. So she's like, yeah, now I'm back in school for real estate, and I'm like, that's great. Are you gonna stick with it? you know She can really, she has a Virgo rising, and she has her sun in the third house, and actually I think it's stellium in the third house. But she has all the qualities there to run a successful business. It's just sticking to it that seems to be a little dicey for her.
yeah, it's funny, isn't it? You see, it's a great skill. It's a great skill, and it's an art to be able to start something. And some people they're designed to just do that. They're the igniters, and then give it to somebody else, and then you go off and start something else, and hopefully that's what she'll get into.
Now, as far as the Saturn return, was there ever a point in your life where you sort of shut spirituality out, or like ran from it? Because
Yeah.
people, wherever Saturn is in your chart, you tend to run from it because it makes things difficult, or you try to ignore it or suppress it and not pay that much attention to it. So I think your Saturn return sort of reawakens it. Like, all right, now you have to deal with whatever it is you've been running from, or whatever it is has been plaguing you all these years.
Absolutely. I went through a period when after the mother of my kids left, I should have just stopped. I should have just collapsed and repaired, but I carried on. And in the back of my mind, I was like, well, you know what? All this stuff that I'm saying, what's it got me? Totally and utterly, self-centered, that idiotic kind of way we get. So I stopped everything. And I didn't, like, I put my tarot cards away, all the books that I had. I don't have many, but I just put them all in the box, put them away, and didn't do anything. And I went and got a job, and it was all right. I mean, it was quite a well-paid job, but I was living like a shadow of myself. And then what got me back into it was I went to do a counselling course, and I sat in the room and I looked around at these people, about 8-10 people in the room. And I looked around at the way they were talking and interacting with each other, and then we started talking as a group, and I thought, God, you know what? All these people need counselling. So I was like, well, probably I do then as well. So I went to the tutor and I said, look, I'm going to go and get like a 10 or 12 week course of counselling before I start this. I said, because I sat down here tonight with the extreme reaction that these people are all kind of a bit screwed up, and I may well be as well. So he's like, well, that's really cool. So I went and I had my counselling. That was okay. I'll tell you a really good story. There are a lot of interesting styles of counselling. This is probably one of the ways not to do it. So I went to this woman and we were talking, first session with this counsellor. Now, when you counsel, you face each other. So I walked into the room and I was sat against the wall, and she was looking out of the window like this, and I was sat over here. So that was good. And then it got to 45 minutes towards the end, and we started to talk about, yeah, I was telling her about something in the past, and she said, right, well, it sounds to me like you've got abandonment issues. Anyway, I've got to end it now. And I'm like, that's good. Abandonment issues, now you're abandoning me. Then she picked up her diary and said, no, I can't see you for another 6 weeks. And I said, you just abandoned me. You just brought that up and you just abandoned me. So I don't know what you're talking about. So beware, right? If you're that kind of counsellor, you're not doing anybody favours. Anyway.
You're not helping the problem.
No, just making it worse. So I went back and I did the counselling course, and I started to read stuff by Carl Rogers. and the like. And I thought, man, this is the stuff that I've been teaching like in my awareness groups. I sat at my table and made up. Not that you ever can make anything up. And I thought, that's it. I'm tapping into this consciousness of becoming, as Carl Rogers puts it, a complete person or a self-realized person, being congruent, which means being completely there and being completely open and yourself all the way through. And that was it. That reignited the fire. I was like, no, this is me. This is me. And then I worked, I thought, right, I don't want to do it in the way that I did before, going around the spiritist churches doing mediumship. I don't want to do that because ultimately it doesn't do enough for me. And then of course, you practice on being yourself. It's very interesting because the first time I sat down in 2012 to make a YouTube video, I sat in front of the camera and I was like, okay, don't know what to say. Who's going to listen? All this ego rubbish. Who's going to listen to me? What do I know? I thought, right, go away, work on your self-confidence. And I came back in I think it was January or February, a few months later, and wow, the rest is history. If you want to laugh, go back to my early videos because I've lost 4 stone and I had this huge, great beard. So, yeah, go if you want to laugh. I look like, I don't know what I look like, some kind of
Bum on the street.
yeah, it was really interesting. There's birds coming out of it and everything. Yeah, so, but that was me kind of going in again. That was like the final thing for me. It was me because I'd been ill. I'd had glandular fever a few years ago, and as residue of not doing things 100% properly. And so this for me, it was going into that kind of like fatness is a bit of it's like an airbag. We get, if there's 2 ways we get overweight. We eat, we eat and eat and eat and eat the wrong stuff, or we have fear, and it's like an airbag. Yeah, so that's the armor, and so I thought, right, well, what are my fears? And I worked on those fears. And remember, fear is just a lack of knowledge. So once you learn about it, you're no longer in fear. You might be terrified, but you're no longer in fear. It's a difference. And gradually the weight came off and the beard shrunk, and I came out and to become just me. It was like that sort of dissolving husk of the old. No, it's quite cathartic, and it was interesting. I didn't mean to do it, but I've journaled it on YouTube, and I can look back on that and see the change, like the transformation. So everything happens for a reason, and a lot of the time our subconscious is really clever, and our conscious mind doesn't always hear it or understand it. So this is why it's always good to keep either video journal or a actual pen and paper journal. Write your life, because you'll look back and you'll go, man, that didn't make sense at the time, but I totally see why that happened now. It gives you great insight.
Well, that's all my questions. You have answered everything. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I don't think so. I think that the practice of astrology, in the same way that learning to read tarot properly as a as a tool for in the moment personal development, self knowledge, understanding, that's really powerful. And it's good that there are guys like you out there doing it, because
Well, thank you. I have a question for you. When it comes to tarot, and also when it comes to like reading an astrological chart, when you're doing it for another person, do you believe that the reader needs to be right within, so they won't like project onto a chart or project onto cards?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I'm real funny about getting readings from other people, because I don't know what's going on in their inner world, and they may project onto a chart or onto tarot cards and just totally like ruin your day. So
I mean, if you sit down and you've had a bad day and somebody is saying to you, oh, can you tell me about my relationship? And let's say you've just had a row, well, you're in your mind, you're gonna be like, well, relationship's a waste of time. You want to get out of this relationship. Yeah, I mean, I have people contact me regularly saying, like, I've been told I'm going to die or I'm going to get cancer, and you're like, what? Just no. Anybody is out there peddling that crap, it says a lot more about them, but it's dangerous because people get scared. I've had people say that they've been cursed and all this stuff, and you know what? We have a duty of care to our our clients, whether they're people that pay us or they're people that watch our channel. They're people that come to us because they believe they believe in what we're doing, and we need to really, you know, hold that. That's a massive honor. So, you know, take it from me, whether you believe it or not, there is no way anybody can know when you're going to pass.
Right.
That information is totally and utterly unobtainable, because it wouldn't do you any favors, would it? You think, I'm going to die next week. Oh well, you know, what am I going to do? What are you going to do with that?
Well, that's $15 I just wasted for you to tell me. Thank you very much.
I want my money back. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go and buy lots of smoothies and just eat ice cream. So I think that you know, you have to be in the right place. It's very interesting that I very briefly, because I wanted to be on TV, I did some work for one of these psychic phone companies, and I don't like the way they operate. I'm sorry if I offend anybody out there, but you know,
It's
not
disgusting.
Yeah, it is disgusting. And I got on TV, and then I knocked it on the head. But you see, we have this thing in life. It's like, when you're not doing, back to the Saturn thing, really, when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, your life is going to be full of calamity. It's going to be difficult. You know, if anything is hard, it's because it's not right. You can plant an acorn in the ground, and it will grow in time into a mighty oak tree. There's no effort involved. It doesn't strain. It doesn't struggle. It works with what it's got. If there's not much water that summer, then it won't grow as fast, but it will still grow. And all we have to do is just be in the moment, you know, and be what you are. And if you can't be what you are on the outside, be it on the inside, because that's better. That's a start, you know. There's an old saying, like, everything is created twice, first in here, then out there. And I think, for me, the most important thing to remember is, if you can imagine it, then you can make it.
Right.
You know, and whatever you want for your life, if you know what you want in there, you can make it. It might be a version, or it might be a remix of it, but you can make it. So we must use that Saturn. Whatever you are, that's, you know, that's you. That's your. Sometimes there's great strength to be found in restriction as well. Sometimes, if life is not letting you move forward, that's all right, because there's still flowers to smell, and coffee to drink, and people to meet. And when you've done all that, then you'll move on. So, you know, everybody, stop working on yourselves and start enjoying yourselves, and the world will be a better place, right?
That's a great way to end it. So
yeah.
I'm going to post a link to his channel below. Again, thank you for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Please comment below and tell us what you thought about the conversation we've had. And thank you for watching. Bye.
Thank you very much.